What was so special about May 17th? Nothing, really. It wasn't my wife's birthday or our anniversary, or even the day we first met. It was just an ordinary Tuesday, and that's exactly why I chose it. My name is Keith, and after 12 years of marriage to Lisa, things had started to feel a little predictable. Not boring exactly, but more like routine. It's not that I didn't love her. She and our kids were the most important part of my life, but lately that sparkle in her eyes, the one I'd always see when I mentioned making love, seemed to have faded. So, being the hopeless romantic that I am, I decided to give her an evening she'd never forget. Monday morning at work, I turned to my secret weapons. Katie, Cheryl, and Karen, 3 of the hottest and most single women in the office. "All right, ladies," I asked, "if you could script the most romantic night of your life, what would it look like?" They immediately jumped in with wild ideas about flying to Paris, making love in a gondola in Venice, or soaking in a hot tub overlooking the Swiss Alps. I had to laugh and reel them in. "Slow down, ladies. I'm talking about something I can do at home or maybe at a downtown hotel. Something that won't break the bank." By noon, they came back with a more practical list of ideas that actually fit my budget. I thanked them, treated them to lunch, and began planning in earnest. Honestly, they seemed even more excited than I was, warning me not to mess it up and even betting on how the night would turn out. The first step was taking Wednesday afternoon off from work. That way, I'd have enough time to get everything ready before Lisa got home. Normally, I didn't get home until 6 p.m., but Lisa was always back by 3:30 to meet the kids when they got off the school bus. Tuesday night, I casually told Lisa, "Hey, my parents want to take the kids out for dinner and a show tomorrow evening. They probably won't be home until around 8. She seemed thrilled by the idea. The kids, on the other hand, were practically bouncing off the walls when I told them they'd actually be spending the night at their grandparents' house. After all, Grandma and Grandpa were notorious for spoiling them rotten. On Wednesday, I left work at 11:30 a.m. with my trusty list in hand. First stop, the store, where I picked up a heartfelt card, a box of her favorite chocolates, and her favorite wine. The girls' list covered every detail, down to the lighting and music needed to set the mood. At the florist, I asked for 2 pounds of pink rose petals. The florist gave me a strange look until I explained my plan. "You must really love your wife to go to all this trouble," she said with a smile as I left with the petals. Next, I booked a table for 8 p.m. at Lisa's favorite steakhouse. I figured we'd need to eat after all the romance. And just in case we decided not to go out, I had steaks waiting in the fridge, ready to grill in the backyard. When I got home, I parked the car behind the house to keep it out of sight, then brought everything into the kitchen. A quick glance at the clock told me it was 2:30. "All right, 1 hour to get this done," I told myself. For the next hour, I worked nonstop. I chilled the wine in the freezer, used rose petals to create a giant heart on the bed, and wrote "I love you" in chocolate chips in the center of it. I filled the garden tub with hot water, added bubbles, and sprinkled the rest of the rose petals on top. On my side of the bed, I placed the wine in an ice bucket. On her nightstand, I set the card beside her reading light. I dimmed the overhead lights, opened a bottle of wine, poured 2 glasses, and set them on the bedside table. Lastly, I placed our portable CD player on the dresser, ready to play romantic music when she entered the room. Satisfied with everything, I jumped into the shower, shaved, and stripped down. At exactly 3:25, I heard her car pull into the driveway. Everything was perfect. I stood at the foot of the bed, naked, holding 2 glasses of wine, ready for her to walk upstairs. But then, I heard laughter from downstairs. Odd laughter. And then footsteps, many footsteps. It wasn't just Lisa's. My pulse quickened as the sound of what could only be described as a herd of horses thundered up the stairs. And then the bedroom door burst open. Yes, they burst in. Lisa and her boss, Rick. Do you know how long 4.75 seconds feels? It's like a single, drawn-out breath. Just long enough to kill the romantic mood and destroy a marriage. Lisa froze in place, her shirt half unbuttoned, her bra already off. It took her 1.5 seconds to realize something was off about the room. Another 2.0 seconds for her brain to send the signal to her voice box, and she finally gasped, "Oh my God!" And the last 1.25 seconds? That's how long it took her to realize she was, for lack of a better word, caught. If there's a Guinness World Record for fastest marriage breakdown, this moment has to be a contender. Rick, seeing the situation, turned around and bolted toward the front door, disappearing in less than 45 seconds. I, on the other hand, stayed and watched as Lisa collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Without a word, I poured the contents of both glasses of wine onto the bed, walked to the closet, and began getting dressed. All the while, Lisa was crying, apologizing, and telling me how much she loved me. Took me about 5 minutes to get dressed. Once ready, I turned to her and said calmly, "It's in your best interest to be gone before I come back." I walked downstairs, got into my car, and drove to the nearest bar where I could get a drink. Sitting at Tony's, finishing my 4th beer, I started wondering what my next step would be. At 6:30, I returned to a now silent, empty house. The front door was unlocked, and Lisa's car was nowhere to be seen. After a quick look downstairs, I headed to the bedroom. Almost everything was as I had left it. The garden tub was still bubbling, and the wine and chocolates were untouched. Lisa's closet was open, and several of her dresser drawers were pulled out. I sat on the bed, trying to sort through my thoughts, when my cell phone rang. Without looking at the screen, I turned it off. I wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone. As I sat there, I made a mental note. I'll need to replace the mattress in the guest room. The next morning, I woke up, showered, shaved, and went to work. But on my way to the office, I felt like a zombie, just going through the motions, numb to everything around me. As soon as I stepped into my office, the girls came rushing in. "Well, how did it go?" All 3 shouted at once, grinning like schoolgirls. "Judging by the way you look, it must have been one hell of a night," Karen giggled, nudging the other 2. "Oh, it was a night, all right," I replied, giving them a short version of what had happened. Their smiles vanished. "What are you going to do?" Cheryl asked cautiously. "Survive," I muttered, "and take care of my children." I glanced at the 3 of them. "If you don't mind, please keep this to yourselves. I don't want to be the laughing stock of the whole office." They apologized profusely, offered their support, and left, assuring me they were there if I needed someone to talk to. I thanked them, closed the door, and got to work. By 9:30 a.m., I had closed or changed every bank account, credit card, life insurance policy, and 401k I had. Then, I called my parents and told them Lisa and I were having some problems, asking if they could keep the kids until the weekend. They were saddened to hear the news but agreed to take care of the children. When I checked my cell phone, I saw 20 messages from Lisa. I deleted them all without listening. Later, I called a friend who gave me the name of a good divorce lawyer, someone reasonably priced. I made an appointment for Friday morning. You don't truly realize how complicated your life is until you sit with a divorce lawyer for 2 hours and have them lay out your options, or lack thereof. The lawyer didn't sugarcoat anything. "It's your word against hers," he explained. "Lisa and Rick hadn't technically done anything when you caught them, and you can't kick her out of the house because it's legally hers too." He paused and delivered the most infuriating blow. "You know what really sucks? She's most likely going to get custody of the kids, the house, and at least 40% of what you make after taxes. He suggested I consider marriage counseling or at least a 90-day cooling-off period before making any final decisions. Look, Keith, he said bluntly, no matter what you do, you're going to be paying child support for the next 8 years, plus house payments. The best thing you can do is bide your time and try to minimize your losses. If I were you, I'd move into the spare bedroom and make life at home as easy as possible for the kids. I left his office feeling defeated. Later that day, I moved all my belongings into the spare bedroom. I bought a new mattress and threw the old one out onto the curb. I ignored Lisa's calls, but I knew it was only a matter of time before she showed up at the house. So I tried to prepare myself for the inevitable confrontation. On Friday, I picked up the kids on my way home from work and took them to a pizza place. They told me they'd had a great time with their grandparents but were happy to be back home. Around 8:30 that evening, Lisa finally showed up. The kids surrounded her with hugs and chatter, but she never took her eyes off me. By 10 p.m., the kids had gone to their rooms, and I retreated to the guest bedroom. As I was closing the door, Lisa stopped me and asked if we could talk. Not tonight, I replied coldly. Maybe tomorrow. I closed and locked the door behind me. From the other side, I heard a muffled scream of frustration as she walked away. I imagined her entering what used to be our bedroom, discovering the stripped sheets and her own mess. I heard the faint rustling of her trying to tidy up the room. The next morning, I noticed the card, rose petals, chocolates, and an empty bottle of wine, all dumped into the trash can. The sight didn't hurt me as much as I thought it would. The kids had breakfast and went about their usual Saturday activities, friends and football. I wasn't particularly hungry, so I made myself a cup of coffee and sat down. Just as I was finishing my first cup, Lisa came downstairs. I poured myself another, grabbed the newspaper, and silently walked out onto the deck. You know that sooner or later you'll have to talk to me, Lisa said, her red, tear-stained eyes fixed on me. But why, Lisa? What can you possibly say to explain what I saw on Wednesday? I snapped back. How long have you been cheating on me with Rick? It was only the second time. Believe me, Lisa sobbed. Why do I have such a hard time believing you? I spat. And by the way, you've lost the privilege of calling me honey or anything else that sounds remotely endearing. We will coexist for the sake of the children until I figure out what's best for me and for them. It looks like you've already made your choice then. Lisa shot back before running into the house. I stayed outside, finishing my coffee, my hands trembling with rage, and then tore the newspaper in frustration. Work sucked for the next 2 weeks, but at least it wasn't as bad as my home life. Someone had spilled the beans at the office, and now every woman there looked at me with pity every time I walked by. My boss even pulled me aside to ask if I needed personal time off, but I told him I was managing and that keeping busy was the only thing holding me together. The kids, however, knew from day one that something was wrong. Dad, did we do something wrong? My youngest asked one evening, his voice filled with concern. Of course not, children, I reassured them. Your mother and I are just going through a difficult time, but everything will be fine. I promise. I hated lying to them, but I didn't have the heart to tell them the truth. Meanwhile, Lisa was constantly trying to get me to talk, even trying to seduce me once, but I felt nothing for her anymore. Whatever love I had for her had been replaced by a mixture of rage, hurt, and emptiness. I was in this miserable state when Cheryl walked into my office on a Thursday, just before 5 p.m. Grab your coat. We're leaving, she announced firmly. I looked up, surprised. I started to say something, but she cut me off. Maybe you didn't hear me, she said, hands on her hips. This is not a request. Grab your damn coat. We're leaving. Before I knew it, Cheryl had dragged me to Tony's, where Katie and Karen, the other two members of her trio, were already waiting at a table in the corner. After ordering drinks, Cheryl wasted no time getting to the point. "You need to come to your senses, Keith," she began. "You've been walking around like a zombie for the past 2 weeks, and while everyone has your back, you're going to drown if you don't pull yourself together." "I have my reasons, Cheryl," I snapped, my voice rising. "So why don't you just back off?" "Back off?" Karen jumped in. "You're not talking to Lisa, Keith. We're your friends. So what the hell do you want? Are you going to wallow in self-pity for the rest of your life?" "I want everything to go back to the way it was before this happened," I muttered, staring into my glass. Katie leaned in, her voice soft but direct. "Didn't you say your marriage was stale? That you wanted to revive it? Do you really want to go back to a boring life? Or do you still love her?" "I love and hate her at the same time," I shouted, slamming my fist on the table. "I want to strangle her and Rick for what they did to me. I just don't know what the hell to do or where to even start." "Let's eat first," Cheryl said calmly, signaling the waiter. "Then we'll figure it out." By the end of the evening, I felt better. They were right, I had to do something. I couldn't just let this drag on. It was tearing me apart. When I got home, Lisa was waiting for me. "Where were you?" she demanded as I walked in. "So what?" I shouted back. "What do you care?" She retreated to the bedroom in tears, slamming the door behind her. The next day, I met with my lawyer, Randy. "I thought you were going to wait on filing for divorce," he said, raising an eyebrow. "I still am," I replied. "But I want to sue the company Rick and Lisa work for. And then I want to hit Rick with an alienation of affection lawsuit." Randy leaned back in his chair. "Keith, you don't have solid evidence. I told you that already." "I know," I said, "but their company is a public one. And with all the corporate scandals in the news lately, I don't think they'd want bad press. Plus, isn't there usually a morality clause in corporate bylaws? A married boss having sex with a married subordinate, especially during work hours, can't be good for them." Randy nodded thoughtfully. "It'll take a couple of days to draft everything and file the papers. I'll keep you updated." For the next 3 days, I felt like my old self again. I joked with people at work, had fun with my kids, and even started talking to Lisa a bit, which made things easier for the children. But deep down, I was waiting for the real fight to begin. On Thursday, Randy called to let me know the company had been served. I asked him to hold off on serving Rick until we'd reached an agreement with the company. By the following Tuesday, Randy and I were sitting across from the CEO and his manager in a conference room. "We've reviewed the documents," the manager began, "and it appears you failed to include any concrete evidence of the alleged incident." He went on to dismiss my claims as frivolous and made it clear they weren't taking me seriously. I didn't say a word. I simply stood up and headed for the door. "I guess we'll see you in court then," I said calmly. "And just so we're clear, we'll be taking testimony from all the office employees. I'm sure you'll appreciate that. How many of them do you think knew what was going on? All I have to do is find 1 or 2. I told them, leaning forward. "How many managers do you think are going to defend Rick when their own jobs are on the line?" I added, smiling. "Good luck, gentlemen," I said, standing and walking out of the room with Randy. I was sitting at my desk on Wednesday when Randy called. "They want to straighten things out, or, as they put it, make this mess go away," he told me. "Well," I said, "here's what I want: $250,000, attorney's fees covered, and both of them transferred to other state offices. That should settle everything." "Got it," Randy replied. "I'll let them know the offer is valid until noon Thursday, and if they don't accept, we'll proceed." That afternoon, Randy called again. They're offering $150,000 and agreeing to cover the fees and the transfers, he told me. Randy, I said, stop haggling. Tell them the price is now $300,000. And if they come back with another counteroffer, the price will go up to $400,000. Maybe this will teach them a lesson. On Thursday at 3:30, Randy called back. They've accepted your offer, he said. I'll have the forms ready for you to sign by 5 p.m. True to his word, the documents arrived at my office at 4:30. They've been waiting for you, my secretary told me as she handed them over. I reviewed the paperwork and the attached check, then signed everything and handed it back. If anyone's looking for me, let them know I'm out for the rest of the day, I said, grabbing my coat and heading to the car. On my way home, I called Randy. Serve Rick tonight, I said. Do it at his house. I felt euphoric. By tomorrow, I would finally have my pound of flesh and could start moving on with my life. When I walked through the door that evening, I called out, Okay, that's it. Grab your coat. We're going out to dinner tonight. Lisa looked at me, stunned, but didn't move. Come on, Lisa, you too, I said, motioning to her. A wide smile spread across her face as she ran to grab her coat. Over dinner, we talked and laughed, just like we had in the early years of our marriage. Felt good, almost good enough to forget everything. Almost. When we got home, the kids thanked me for a great evening and headed to their rooms. Lisa came over, kissed me on the cheek, and said, Thank you. Tonight meant a lot to me. I nodded. We'll have a nice, long talk tomorrow night. Get some sleep, I told her. The next morning, I was sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee when Lisa stormed in, her face red with fury. You son of a bitch, she shouted. You knew last night what was going to happen today, didn't you? Not quite, Lisa, but pretty close, I replied calmly. Where's the job they offered you? I asked. Tenley, New Jersey. Wherever the hell that is, she spat. It seems like my services are no longer needed here. It was either New Jersey or nothing. I told them there was no way I was moving there. So they gave me severance pay and 20 minutes to clean out my desk. 8 years of work, and in 20 minutes I was out the door, she said, sitting down at the kitchen table and sobbing. And Rick, I asked, where's he being transferred to? Flint, Michigan, she muttered, staring at the floor. The armpit of the Midwest, I said, grinning from ear to ear. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. I pulled up a chair and sat across from her. Well, Lisa, this is how the next phase is going to go, I began. If you want to be part of this family, here are the conditions. First, you'll get tested for sexually transmitted diseases and bring me a certificate of health. Then, you'll take a polygraph test. To help you, I've even written all the questions down in advance. I slid a piece of paper across the table. As you can see, the questions start off easy but get progressively harder. Lisa picked up the paper and began reading. By the time she got to the last set of questions, tears were streaming down her face. Am I the biological father of my 2 children? Why did you cheat? When we had sex in the last few months, who were you thinking about, Rick or me? How often have you lied to me in the past few months? How many affairs have you had? Do you still love me? You have a meeting tomorrow at 9 o'clock, I told her. If you get through this without any major surprises, we'll have an appointment with a marriage counselor on Saturday morning at 10. Lisa just sat there, crying as she reread the questions. I can answer them now if you want, she said between sobs. I think I'll wait until tomorrow, I replied. I don't trust you anymore, Lisa. I want to start over without any lies if you don't mind. The next day, Lisa went through the process. I didn't like all her answers, but in my mind, she passed. Do I trust her? Hell no. Do I plan to stay with her? Well, the jury is still out, but we're working on it. The worst part is, we haven't made love in over 5 months, and that's what I really miss. Sure, we've had sex once or twice a week to relieve tension, so to speak, but it's not the same. Rick took his transfer to Flint, Michigan, last year. I sent him a Christmas card from Florida with the message, "Glad you're not here." Oh, and by the way, his wife and kids left him 6 months after the move. It seems the sunny South won over the cheating husband. Go figure. Thank you for listening to this story. Now, here's another one for you. I was watching TV when the doorbell rang. With a groan, I got up, walked to the door, and peeked through the peephole. Crap. How the hell did she manage to find me? For a brief moment, I thought about just walking back to the couch and ignoring it. But I knew her well enough to realize that if she had gone through the trouble of finding me, she wasn't going to leave without getting what she came for. Sighing, I connected the chain and opened the door just wide enough so we could see each other. "What the hell do you want?" I asked flatly. "I just want to talk to you," she said, her eyes pleading. "Didn't my leaving make it clear that I have no interest in ever seeing you again, let alone talking to you?" "I have no idea why you left," she replied, her voice breaking. "I came home, and you were just gone. All your stuff gone." No, don't give me that nonsense," I snapped. "You heard me when I told you what would happen if you walked out that door." "Can I come in?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, but I knew I needed to get this over with. Sighing, I unclasped the chain, stepped aside, and let her in. She walked into the living room, sat down on the sofa, and immediately asked for a glass of water. As I made my way to the kitchen, my mind drifted back to the night that had started it all. I had just gotten home from work and found my wife, Alice, getting dressed. Not in her usual casual outfit, but in that dress, the little black one that she always wore when she wanted to turn heads. "I didn't know we had plans for a date," I said, eyeing her curiously. "Not with us," she replied nonchalantly, adjusting her earrings. "I have a date tonight." "A date? With whom?" I asked, my voice rising in shock. "You don't know him," she replied. "He's a guy I work with. He's new to the office and doesn't know many people yet. He wanted to go to Sylvia's birthday party, but he didn't want to go alone, so he asked me to go with him." I stared at her in disbelief. "He knows you're married, doesn't he?" "It doesn't matter," she said dismissively. "Nothing's going to happen between us. Besides, I don't want to go to Sylvia's party alone, and you won't go with me. And you know exactly why I won't go." I shot back, my frustration building. "I can't stand being around that woman. I don't want you having anything to do with her either." "Get used to it, Sam," she said coldly. "She's been my best friend since first grade, and I'm not going to turn my back on her just because you don't like her." "I don't like her," I replied sharply, "because she's been divorced 4 times, and every single time, it was because she cheated on her husband, and I don't go to her parties because of all the illegal drugs she has lying around. It's not exactly a healthy environment, Alice." "Oh, so you think just because she cheated I will too? Just because we're close?" "I think it's very likely," I said bitterly. "Just look at yourself right now. You're in your take-me outfit, a little black dress, all dolled up for a date with another man. You're obviously dressing for him, and I can only think of one reason you'd dress this sexy for him." "That's disgusting," she snapped. "What you're saying isn't true." "Isn't it?" I asked. "What did you wear to the last 2 parties at Sylvia's?" "I'll tell you, in case you've conveniently forgotten. Once it was trousers and a blouse. Another time, jeans and a sweater. But now, There's no doubt in my mind why you're dressed this way for tonight's party. Sylvia's finally convinced you to cross that line. From the snippets of conversations I've overheard, I know she's been trying to get you to join her little orgies for years. Looks like she finally got what she wanted. You're wrong, Alice said, her voice shaking. It's not like that at all. It's easy enough to prove me wrong, I said. Don't go. Stay here with me. I can't. Todd is counting on me, she replied. And Todd is more important to you than me? I asked, anger boiling beneath the surface. All I can say is, if you leave tonight, you will kiss this marriage goodbye, I said coldly. Don't be ridiculous. It won't hurt us at all, she said, walking toward the door. Goodbye, Alice, I said firmly. She paused for a moment, as if she sensed the finality in my voice. Then, without a word, she walked out. Did I overreact? I don't think so. I knew too much about Sylvia's parties and the people in her circle. A lot of my friends had attended her gatherings, and they told me what went on after the people who weren't into that lifestyle left. Those parties turned into full-blown orgies. Even if Alice wasn't participating, the fact that she kept attending and being around that environment bothered me deeply. I also couldn't ignore what I'd overheard Sylvia say to Alice before. Forget about him. You're married, but so what? Join in, you know you want to. And Alice's response? Yes, I do want to, but I won't because Sam wouldn't. That wasn't enough for me. I spent countless hours trying to convince Alice to cut ties with Sylvia and stop going to her parties. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't break the bond she had with her so-called best friend. Back in the present, I handed Alice the glass of water she had asked for and sat down across from her. My thoughts were still racing. Divorce seemed like the logical step, but could I even prove that she had cheated? And even if she hadn't physically cheated, could I live with her after her "you, Sam, I'm leaving" attitude? The only real issue in our marriage had always been Sylvia. Alice constantly hung out with her, and I just couldn't stand her. Sylvia was trash as far as I was concerned, and Alice knew exactly how I felt about her. The ringing of the bedside phone woke me up, and as I sat up groggily, I glanced at the alarm clock. 1 o'clock in the morning. I wondered who would be calling me at this hour. Hello, I answered, still half asleep. Hey, idiot, did I wake you up? Came Sylvia's grating voice. What do you want, Sylvia? I growled. I'm just calling to let you know that your wife has finally found herself a real man, she sneered. What the hell are you talking about? Just what I said. Alice found herself a real man. A man who can give her what she really needs. Now just listen. Before I could respond, I heard the unmistakable sounds of people having sex through the phone. Then I heard it clear as day. Oh God, yes. Take me, please. Take me harder. It was Alice's voice. I hung up immediately, my hands shaking with fury and heartbreak. 30 seconds later, the phone rang again. I didn't need to check who it was. I picked up the receiver, dropped it on the floor, and let it ring. One of the few benefits of living in an apartment is that you don't accumulate much stuff because you don't have the space for it. Within an hour, I had everything packed up and loaded into my truck. By 3 a.m., I was checked into a motel. By 9 a.m., I was standing at the bank's doors, waiting for them to open. The moment they did, I cleared all our joint accounts. From there, I went straight to work and told Jake, my boss, that I was quitting, effective immediately. When he asked why, I told him everything. He said he understood, wrote me a final paycheck, helped me load my tools, and wished me well. My phone had been ringing nonstop since 7 a.m., and every call was from Alice. Eventually, I turned it off. I made a mental note to get a new number but quickly changed my mind. I didn't trust that Alice wouldn't somehow get the new number from our cell phone provider. Instead, I threw the phone in the trash and bought a cheap prepaid phone from Walmart. Fortunately, I didn't need to deal with any credit cards. Alice and I didn't have any joint cards. She had 2 in her name and I had 3 in mine. By 10 a.m., I was already on the road, driving to a destination I hadn't yet decided. All I knew was that I needed to get as far away from Alice as possible. I eventually landed in Castle Rock, Colorado. I found a job in my field and started a new life. If Alice ever decided to file for divorce, she'd know where to find me within a year. But honestly, I didn't care. I had no plans to ever get married again. The next 2 years passed quietly. Life was good. I dated casually and even had a friend with benefits. Then one day, there she was. "You heard me when I told you what would happen if you went on that date," I said, my voice cold and even. "You ignored me, went on the date, and I did exactly what I said I was going to do." "How did you find me?" I asked, genuinely curious. "A very expensive private detective," she replied. "And why? Why go through all this trouble? What do you want?" "You're my husband," she said simply. "How did you afford a very expensive private detective on your secretary's salary?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "I sold the house." "What house?" I asked before the answer hit me. "Ah, the one you got in court." I paused. "Never mind. It doesn't matter." "Well, you wasted your money and time tracking me down because we're done," I said firmly. "You did exactly what I knew you were going to do when you left me to go to that party. And don't bother wasting your breath trying to tell me nothing happened. Your best friend called me at 1 o'clock in the morning and let me listen to what was happening." "Your voice?" "Alice." "Oh God, yes. Take me, please. Take me harder." That said it all. "She set me up," Alice cried desperately. "I need to tell you what really happened that night since you weren't there to see or hear it." "Go ahead," I said, crossing my arms. "Let's hear your story." "I didn't go to that party to get screwed," Alice began, her voice trembling. "That was the farthest thing from my mind. Yes, I changed for the party because Sylvia asked me to. For some reason, she said she didn't like Todd. She couldn't just tell him not to come to the party because it was an open invitation to everyone in the office. So she asked me to dress sexy and let him think he was lucky." She paused, her voice faltering. "I like to dress up, and that's what I did. Todd took one look at me and thought he was going to hit the jackpot that night. He stuck to me like glue, like he was afraid someone else might get to me. It was a fun party, and yeah, Todd hung around, but I danced with other guys too. I wasn't doing anything wrong." Alice looked down, fiddling with her hands. "After the party, my head started spinning. Sylvia told me I'd had too much to drink and needed to lie down. She put me to bed in one of the guest rooms. I leaned back in my chair, skeptical but willing to let her continue. "Keep going," I said, my tone still ice cold. "I don't know how or when it started," Alice began, her voice trembling. "But at some point during the party, I realized they were making love to me." Her words felt like a punch to the gut, but I stayed silent, letting her continue. "I thought I was home in bed with you, Sam," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I swear I did. But then I heard someone say, 'Hurry up. Okay? I'm next.' And that's when it hit me. I looked around and saw Sylvia on the bed next to me, Todd, Ben Grady, and several other guys standing around, naked. One of them was obviously going to be next. I sat back, disgusted but forcing myself to listen. She continued, her voice shaking as she recounted the details. "You know me, Sam. You know how I am when we make love. I get lost. I become a sex machine," she said, her face full of shame. "I don't know how many of them did this to me before I passed out." Alice paused, wiping her tears, then took a deep breath. "The next morning, I woke up next to Bob Flanagan. He was leaning on his elbow, staring at me with this expression on his face. I asked him, "What?" She hesitated, her voice breaking. "I just never thought you'd cheat on Sam," he said to me. "Glad you did, though. I hope to see you again." I slapped him across the face, got dressed, and left. I went straight to the hospital. I clenched my fists but kept my face expressionless as she continued. "They tested me and found traces of Rohypnol and ecstasy in my blood," she said. "The hospital called the police, and while I waited for them to arrive, I tried to call you over and over again, but I couldn't get through. It wasn't until I got home and found everything gone that I realized why. You were already gone." Her voice cracked, and she wiped away more tears. When the police arrived, I told them everything I could remember. The first person they talked to was Flanagan. He claimed he had no idea I was drugged or high. He said he thought I had just finally decided to join in because that's what always happened at Sylvia's parties. I shook my head silently, my stomach twisting. "Flanagan told them I knew what happened at those parties," she admitted. "He said I had stood by, watched, and even laughed about it before. He thought I had just decided it was my turn." Alice clenched her hands together, her knuckles white. The police dug deeper, and when they questioned Todd, he confessed. He said it was all Sylvia's doing. She told him I was hesitant about joining in, but that if she gave me some help, I'd come around. She thought once the drugs wore off, I'd enjoy it and want to do it again. And the thing is, Alice hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. She was right. I did enjoy it. But here's where she messed up. She didn't care that I told her over and over that I wouldn't do it without you. You had to agree, Sam. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. Her words were like nails in a coffin, sealing any possibility of reconciliation. But she wasn't finished. After the hospital and the police, an officer drove me home. That's when I realized why I couldn't reach you. You were gone. I broke down and cried for 2 days straight. Then I hired a lawyer and filed lawsuits against everyone who was at that party and took advantage of me. I raised an eyebrow at this, skeptical. Most of the lawsuits were thrown out, she admitted. Everyone said the same thing Flanagan did, that they thought I knew what I was doing. But the lawsuits against Sylvia and Todd stuck because they conspired against me. I won my claims. Sylvia didn't have anything except her house, so they asked if I'd accept it as part of the settlement. She paused, swallowing hard. She owed $330,000 on it, but with the money I got from Todd, I was able to pay it off. I sold the house immediately and used the money to hire a private investigator to find you. And here I am. I leaned forward, staring her down. "And you spent all that money and time tracking me down for what? To try to fix this?" "Yes," she cried. "I love you, Sam. I belong to you." I let out a bitter laugh. "You would have been smarter to spend that money on a lawyer and file for divorce. You could have used abandonment as your reason." "I don't want a divorce, Sam," she said desperately. "I want us." "What you want doesn't matter to me anymore, Alice," I said coldly. "You may not have done it of your own free will, but you walked out that door willingly. I told you what would happen if you left, and you ignored me. That's the real issue here, not what happened at Sylvia's. You made your choice that night." Alice started crying harder. "Sam, can't you understand? I didn't do this willingly. I was drugged." "No, Alice," I replied, my voice rising. "You're the one who doesn't understand. This isn't just about what happened at that party. This is about you. The moment you walked out that door to go see Sylvia, dressed for another man, no less, you showed complete disrespect for me and for our marriage. You killed whatever us there was the second you walked out that door." Alice shook her head, her voice trembling. It's not like that, Sam. It won't hurt us. Stop, I interrupted sharply. Don't even finish that sentence. I don't want to date a woman who can do what you did. I don't want to be with someone who would walk out on me like that, Alice. But I didn't, she began, but I cut her off again. Just leave, Alice. There's nothing left to say. I need to get ready for dinner. She hesitated, then tried again. I'll eat with you and we can talk more. I can convince you that we can fix this. Her words hadn't even fully left her mouth when the front door opened, and in walked someone I wasn't expecting. A beautiful blonde walked through the door, calling out, "I'm home. Baby, what's for dinner?" Then she noticed Alice and stopped, her smile faltering for just a second before she composed herself. "Who's this?" Beverly asked, looking at Alice with mild curiosity. "This is Alice," I replied calmly. "You've heard me mention her once or twice. Alice, this is Beverly." To my surprise, Beverly walked straight up to Alice, leaned in, and hugged her warmly. "Thank you for sending Sam to me," she said cheerfully, her tone sincere. Then she turned back to me and asked, "What's for dinner?" "I think we'll go out tonight," I said. "I made a reservation at Angelo's." "Perfect," she replied, beaming. "I'll go change." Beverly glanced back at Alice as she headed toward the bedroom and added, "Nice to meet you, Alice. Maybe we can get together sometime and compare experiences." Alice stood frozen, her face pale with shock. "You need to leave now, Alice," I said, breaking the silence. "I need to change for dinner." "Does she know you were married?" Alice asked, her voice trembling. "She knows," I replied simply. "You need to let her know that I will fight for you, Sam," Alice said, her voice rising. I shook my head. "Wake up, Alice. For you to fight for me, you'd need to spend time with me, and that just won't happen. Get a divorce. Find yourself another man. And when you find him, don't dump the same baggage on him that you dumped on me." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she said, "Damn it, Sam. Why can't you understand that I didn't cheat on you? I was drugged. It was against my will." I sighed, tired of repeating myself. "Alice, in order for you to have been drugged, you had to be there. That's the whole point. I told you not to go. I told you when you opened the door to leave that if you walked out, you'd kiss your marriage goodbye. You ignored me. You left. The marriage is over. It's that simple." She stared at me, her face contorted with desperation. "I'm not going to divorce you, Sam," she said, her voice breaking. "And you should tell your girlfriend about this, about us. She can never marry you." I smirked faintly. "She can't marry me anyway. She's already married and in the same boat as me. Her husband won't give her a divorce, and she doesn't see the point in spending money to get one." Alice's expression fell as the truth of my words sank in. "I'll go," she said finally, her voice trembling, "but I won't go far. I can't bring you back from a long distance, so I'm moving here. I'm going to take you back." I let out a bitter laugh. "Nonsense, Alice. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. You need to get it into your head that I'm serious. I do not want you. Now go." Alice's tears continued to fall as she turned and left. Beverly walked back into the room a few minutes later, looking absolutely radiant in a sleek black dress. "Why aren't you ready yet?" she asked, playfully raising an eyebrow. "I'm getting there," I replied. "It just took me longer to get rid of her than I thought." "Is she gone?" Beverly asked, her tone serious. "Forever, it seems," I said. "I made it clear to her that I wanted nothing to do with her." "That's good," Beverly said, a sly smile spreading across her face. "Because I'm not going to let you get away from me." I couldn't help but smile back. 10 minutes and I'll be ready. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.